Miami was without Bam Adebayo against Cleveland and their impressive bigs, and it didn't matter as Kyle Lowry turned back the clock for an amazing 28-point performance, but there were contributions across the board, and they shut down the Cavs for the biggest win of the season, a 33-point blowout. We'll break down all the action and answer your questions on today's episode of Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to Locked On Heat, your daily podcast on the Miami Heat. I'm Wes Goldberg. Joining me, as always, David Ramil. However you're tuning in on YouTube, Odyssey, your favorite podcast app, thanks so much for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. We're recording this Wednesday night after the Heat beat the Cavs 129-96, two straight blowouts and a quality win in this one. After Monday's wire-to-wire win in Chicago, the Heat have not trailed in a game since Saturday. We'll get to credit cookies for Kyle Lowry, Caleb Martin, Jaime Jaquez in a minute, but two team-wide stats to explain this win. Threes made and points off turnovers. The Heat made 20 of 35 three-pointers. Lowry and Jaquez responsible for most of those. They recorded 11 steals and scored 28 points off of those turnovers. A dominant team-wide win, but I want to get back to Kyle Lowry. 28 points to lead the team, 7 of 8 from three-point range. David, what got into him tonight?
I'm not sure. I don't think it was anything specific. He understands what's at stake. He spoke after the game on the broadcast and mentioned the fact that he knew he'd have to step up without Bam Adebayo in the lineup, without Kevin Love as well, unable to make his return to Cleveland, and was incredible early on in the first quarter, hitting 5 of his 6 shots in the quarter, 15 points, and was just really engaged throughout. He looked amazing, just explosive to the rim, decisive when he had the ball in the perimeter, catch and shoot situations. He looked really, really comfortable, letting it fly. This was Kyle Lowry of old. Like this was, I hate using that kind of term, vintage performance, but this was absolutely like one of his best games. Not just in a Heat uniform, but maybe throughout his career. Just the fact that he was able to, again, continue to score, kept it going, played really well overall, and just really good on defense as well.
Why don't you like the term vintage performance?
Because I feel like it's kind of, we heard it so much with Dwayne whenever he had like a point outing. Yeah, I was just like, all right, he hit a nice layup in the lane. It's like vintage Dwayne Wade. It's like,
I see. This is the right framework to use the phrase vintage performance, because it was right. Like this was,
it really was
like 2018-19 NBA Finals winning Kyle Lowry for the right. I joked during the game, like, I don't even think the ball touched his palms. It was just all fingertips the whole time. He was getting rid of it so fast. He was in the motion with those catch and shoot attempts. You used the word decisive. I think that's the perfect word to describe what it is that he did. He had the openings. Cleveland likes to play a lot of drop. They like to kind of do a soft shell on the perimeter. They want to take away what is around the rim. And if that means they're going to give up some above the break threes, then they're going to do that. I think all of Kyle Lowry's three-pointers came from above the break. He just made them. He was on fire in this one. And he made 2 catch and shoot threes to start the game on Miami's first 2 possessions. And you kind of got the sense right away. You're like, oh, he sees that this is an opening for him. Like there is no other reason for him to do this unless he thinks it's a huge advantage for his team. And obviously it was, because it just went on to keep going. He just kept going on to do that, whether it was him making the 3-pointers or one of his teammates. I mentioned some of the stats before, but Lowry 7 of 9 from 3-point range. Jaime Jaquez 4 for 4 from 3-point range. Caleb Martin got it going. 2 of 5 from distance. Josh Richardson 2 of 4 from distance. Like that 3. Haywood Highsmith 2 of 3. Even Jimmy Butler, he only went 1 for 5, but he took 5 3-pointers and he didn't even play in the fourth quarter in this one. So this is obviously an area that the Heat believed that they could take an advantage. They ended up getting 35 of these 3-pointers up, making 20 of them.
Amazing performance from 3-point range. Like that was the difference. Like again, I understand that Cleveland without Donovan Mitchell, without Isaac Okoro, Dean Wade, they had missing a couple of rotation players there. So you have to acknowledge that. But Miami still played very effectively, understanding
the Heat missing Bam Adebayo and Kevin Love. We didn't mention that yet. So important.
I know, absolutely. And I think, Bam is such an important part of what they do defensively and offensively. And they didn't miss a beat. Like they got great contributions across the board. I know we'll talk about that in the next segment. We would give out credit cookies, but just everybody understanding their role. This team is so much better than even last year's version. They just look really dynamic. Next man up mentality, whatever you want to call it. This team is deeper. They're better. They play fast. They play with pace, purpose. Just the way they attack other teams now, such a far cry from where they were when they started off the season 1-4. Even those first 5 games, obviously that 2-point win or 1-point win against the Detroit Pistons in the first game of the season doesn't really matter, but also seems like that happened a year ago compared to what this team has been 9-1 over the last 10 games. Let's be honest, they probably should be on a 10-game win streak right now if they hadn't bloated against the Chicago Bulls on Saturday. But aside from that, they just look really dynamic.
The quality win part of this is what stands out to me also, because, you know, the past few opponents have not been strong, right? This has not been the strongest in terms of, hasn't been the toughest schedule in terms of the opponents they've played.
Yes.
A lot of these games are on the road. Several of them on the second night of back-to-back are with the rest disadvantage. So I don't want to take anything away from the Heat's current sort of win streak that they're on right now, the stretch of wins. But against the Cavs, and yeah, they had some guys missing, but so did the Heat. This was a quality win in Cleveland with a lot going on here. The night before Thanksgiving, you got 2 really big games on the road coming up, Friday and Saturday in New York and in Brooklyn. This could have been looked at almost like a trap game, is like disrespectful to the Cavs because they're a good team, but just because of the context around it with the holiday and then a big trip coming up in New York, and then and you know the in-season tournament ramifications of Friday's game at Madison Square Garden, like all that stuff could have gotten the Heat looking forward a little bit and skipping this one. And you know what, Bam's not playing, Kevin Love's already for personal reasons. Maybe this one's just a scheduled loss. They didn't do that. They came out here firing. First quarter, took a huge lead, led wire to wire, basically blew the Cavaliers out the entire game, and got the quality performances up and down the roster. With Bam out, the thing with Bam is all the defensive stuff gets a lot of attention. The offensive stuff, what we tend to focus on is his scoring and his aggressiveness. But he is Miami's main trigger into most of their 3-point looks. The dribble handoff and the hard screens that he sets out there on the perimeter, high screen and roll actions and stuff like that. That is what gets Miami, I would say, a majority of their looks from 3-point range. And with Bam out, yeah, you got good screen games from Thomas Bryant and Orlando Robinson, who filled up the center minutes tonight. But it was just a lot of, hey, let me come off the screen, be decisive early in the shot clock kind of stuff, and getting those up. I thought the Heat played with a terrific pace tonight.
Absolutely.
I just thought offensively, it's not quite like a Ewing theory thing, but without Bam, it did just sort of simplify things a little bit more against the Cavaliers team that defensively was trying to do a lot of different things. They tried some zone, they did a lot of drop coverage and things like that. But I just thought, like, you know what? Sometimes simpler is just better.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good point. I texted you after the game, and my takeaway was that without Bam as a connector, and that's basically what it is. Like, that's what you're explaining, is that he's the hub of the offense. He's a stopping point. You know, you can drive and kick, and you kick it out to Bam because he's always there from that 18 to 20-foot range. And then you're going to either work a pick and roll for a 3-point opportunity. He's going to pull up for that long jumper that he's been nailing with regularity now, or he's going to find a seam and maybe cut to the hoop or something like that. Without him there, it was a lot of the drive and kick, maybe pick and roll at the top of the perimeter, get into the painted area, and you flare out to an open shooter from the perimeter. And everybody, I know I used the term for Kyle, but I think there was a lot more decisiveness there. And I don't know if it was a byproduct of missing Bam and Adebayo, but everybody seemed like they understood what was at stake, and getting those shots off early, as you hinted, I think was a top priority for them.
Should also mention that Cleveland was playing on the second night of a back-to-back after going to overtime against a very physical Philadelphia 76ers team. That probably had something to do with it, but there were so many injuries, so many things going on here, that Cleveland was still a 1.5-point favorite, according to FanDuel in this one. And so, look, you could find reasons and all these things. A quality win and a blowout one at that for the Miami Heat. We're gonna get to credit cookies next. I don't know that we have enough for Jaime Jaquez Jr. at this point. It's coming up next here on Locked On Heat. Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube and on your favorite podcast app. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. So go to Locked On Sports today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. It's really cool. Like, you could just literally stream that onto your smart TV and just have that playing instead of sports yelling. You could just have really insightful stuff going on. It's really neat.
Sports yelling is a really underappreciated art form, I think.
We should do more. We could do a whole sports yelling topic
sure
here.
Could.
Well, it's time for the tastiest segment on Locked On Heat. It is time to hand out some credit cookies. Do we have some Thanksgiving themed cookies that we can hand out, David?
Yeah, like turkey cookies, maybe, like in shaped like little turkeys.
Shaped
made
like turkeys, not made.
Yeah, not made out of turkey. That would be disgusting or delicious. I don't know anymore. I can't tell anymore. I don't know.
What about like a cranberry white chocolate situation?
I'm not a big fan of cranberry sauce, but sure, why not? It could work.
All right. Where do you want to start?
We mentioned Kyle. Let's knock that out early. I think he set the tone so early on, and he was so dynamic and just such a big part of what they did so well today. And I don't know how many more of these type of performances we'll get regularly. He did wind up not playing much of the fourth quarter, if at all, in the fourth quarter. So right. I think that was great for him to get some kind of rest. He looks in great shape. He looks really, really good. He's been really good, even when he hasn't been productive too. I think people, again, expect more out of him because of the salary and everything else. I hate that salary comparison because that's not fair. He got paid what was the market at that point in time, and it was the right price for landing him. And he was expected to be perhaps more productive, but he's also settled the floor. And this year in particular, I think he's done a really, really good job of playing in his role very effectively. So I'm going to give him 3 cookies just because he was such a dynamic offensive player all night.
3 seems right to me. We got a lot to give out here. And so almost seems like not enough. But like I said, there's a lot to spread out here. We only have 10 cookies to give out. And them's the rules. Look, the guy's 37 years old. I don't know what people expect. The fact that he's not as productive as he once was should be the least bit surprising. Like that, it would be surprising if he was still scoring 18 points a game and with 9 assists per game like he was averaging in his prime. Like, that would be ridiculous. That would be what LeBron and guys like that are doing. Like, it just doesn't happen. And
that's
so
1 of 1.
Yeah, exactly. So look, I've said this before. The contract is the contract, and the contract length was the contract length. But I think the Heat fully understood that this final year of Lowry's contract could look just like this at its low points. So if you're able to get a 28-point performance here and there from him that can get you a big road win, then you take it. And that's just icing on the cake. That's all we're talking about. The other, he's not expected to be a scorer. But with Bam and Tyler Hero both out, and Jimmy Butler kind of having an off night, 3 of 12 overall from the field, he got off to a good start and then kind of tapered off. But credit to Lowry. He got it going early, and he didn't let up until he didn't have to play anymore. Only 29 minutes played. So it was good on him. I think 3 cookies is fine. Let's go to Jaime Jaquez Jr. Wow. I mean, before I get to this, 3 different players in this game for the Miami Heat have their best games of the season scoring-wise. Already talked about Lowry. Jaime Jaquez surpassed his previous rookie high of 21 points in a game, had 22 points tonight. And then we also had Caleb Martin, who obviously has been dealing with the knee issues, having 14 points tonight. That was his best game of the season. So 3 different Heat players having their season best performances scoring-wise. Jaime Jaquez Jr., 7 of 10 overall, 4 for 4 from 3-point range, 8 rebounds, an assist, a steal. If there's a turn in the punch bowl of the Jaime Jaquez night, it's 6 turnovers in this one. But none of them felt that costly when they were up as much as they were. And so just a really strong Jaime Jaquez night. And I was really impressed with his work in the post against the big Cavaliers team.
That's right. I think when he saw those opportunities, when he had somebody smaller, he took advantage of them. But even against bigs like that, he found the right ways of attacking them, drawing contact on occasion, finishing at the rim, finding those seams there. And it was really effective. But, man, I as much as you can appreciate the low post work, like, that shooting is otherworldly at this point. Like, again, I don't know how consistent this is going to be, but we wondered whether or not he could get to like a league average a few episodes ago. But he's been shooting it so well, 4 of 4, and the shot, the rhythm, all so comfortable. And again, very, very decisive, like no hesitation there. And I know that's Jaime's game in general. Like, he does not waste any time when it comes to having the ball in his hands. He's going to either make the right pass or find a way to attack a defense or let it fly. And tonight he was letting it fly. 4 of 4. It's just really impressive. Like, he has to be considered one of the top 3 rookies in the class this year. Right at this point, I think he's just been so effective. Top 4. I mean, who are the top 4? Yeah, Wemby,
Chet,
sure,
Asar
Chet,
Thompson, and Jaime Jaquez. That's the 4. Those are the 4
but
standout rookies.
Asar, like great. There's also 2
I'm not putting them in
12.
order. I'm just saying those are your top 4. Those are your standouts.
Okay, fair enough. And I think even Jaime's game might be a little bit more versatile than Thompson's, which is saying something too. So I look, he's been great, and I think 2 cookies feels like almost not enough. 3 cookies feels like a little bit too much, but I don't know.
Let's go 2.
You be the deciding
factor. Let's go 2 because I'm looking ahead here. But Jaime Jaquez Jr. getting the attention of the national media. ESPN's Bobby Marks tweeting last 10 games for Jaime Jaquez Jr. 13.4 points, 56.9% from the field, and 50% from 3-point range. 50%. The 3-pointers, it's a little PJ Tucker-y, where I don't think guys are necessarily closing out hard on him, but but still credit. He's making the shots. And we saw what the Heat could do when they have a guy like PJ Tucker making 40+% of his threes from the corners. And Jaime Jaquez Jr., a majority of his looks come from the corners. That's his sweet spot. That's exactly where you want him to be. You don't need him going crazy above the break. Hit those shots from the corners, and then every once in a while, jam an elbow in, get to the low post, make those moves like he did tonight several times, and then he can also play make out of those situations too. His cutting and his passing are very advanced. The defense has been awesome, basically since feet touched ground on this thing. So continue to be really impressed with him.
I wanted to call out that Eric Spoelstra put him in the game, took out Duncan early on. I think Duncan had maybe picked up another foul or something like that early in the game, but put Jaime in right away, and he responded. With Duncan struggling tonight to kind of find his space, maybe going up against a guy like Max or something. I don't know exactly what it was that was challenging Duncan tonight, but he wasn't effective tonight. As good as he's been overall over the last couple of days or weeks, rather.
All right. I thought he was all right. He had 3 assists. He was a team best plus 32, whatever that's worth. The plus minus guy, but I thought he was okay. But let's go to but you're right. Like the lineups now, and we've seen Spo do this with Jaime. What was it on the wing? It was Jaime, Highsmith. Maybe Jimmy Butler was still in at that point. Yeah, I think it was. We've seen Spoelstra start to use Jaquez with Jimmy Butler a lot more. And with Highsmith and Caleb Martin coming back and playing a lot of minutes, he's not afraid to play 3 of those 4 guys at the same time. And I love the length that they're playing with in those kinds of lineups. So let's go to Orlando Robinson next. I want to give 2 cookies to him.
Yes.
14 points, 9 rebounds, 4 of which were offensive rebounds, 6 of 10 from the field, made a 3-pointer in the 4th quarter, just for fun, just for funsies. A couple of blocks in this one. He was phenomenal. We're also going to give a cookie to Thomas Bryant. I don't want to take anything away from him as a starting center. I thought he was really good. He was setting good screens. He was where he needed to be, gave really good energy. So between the 2 of those guys, we can just knock them both out right now. 1 cookie to Thomas Bryant, 2 of them to Orlando Robinson. Orlando Robinson's first real minutes of the season. He only played once before in garbage time, basically. He was very impressive.
It was unbelievable. Like, I had very low expectations. And, we root for Orlando because I think he's a good guy. He's put in the work. And he was so optimistic about what he'd be able to contribute. Like, either he thought he might contend for a starting job, and he's fallen out of the rotation.
You're talking about our conversation with him at Media Day.
Yeah. And from that point forward, it's just the season has taken a downturn for him. And for him to stay ready like that kind of mentality, and against 2 all-stars or almost all-stars in Mobley and Allen, like, he was really, really effective. And his positioning for those rebounds, that was huge. I don't even know what the rebound disparity is, but it seemed like every board was going in Miami's favor. 41 to 34. Like, despite the 2 bigs in Cleveland's lineup, Miami was just better positioned, understanding, attacking, finding the way to get to those boards. The anticipation from both Bryant and Orlando Robinson and everybody else, to be honest with you, guys like Duncan, everybody else, finding a way to pull down those boards and initiate that fast-paced transition basketball, really, really essential. But Orlando's overall game, really good around the basket too.
The Heat had an offensive rebounding rate tonight of 31.8%, which is a monster number for Miami, a team that doesn't really get much of those offensive boards. If they were to add the offensive rebounding element to their sort of portfolio here, Miami's whole strategy is get more quality possessions than the opponent, and they usually do that by forcing turnovers, which they obviously did tonight, and limiting their own turnovers and things like that. But if they're able to add the offensive rebound portion of it, that would be great. Still, no Bam, no Kevin Love. Those guys are the guys at center. Miami went to 2 non-rotation guys to fill the center void tonight, and they both stepped up in a big way.
Absolutely.
1 cookie for Caleb Martin, 1 cookie for Josh Richardson. Does that sound about right to you?
Yes, absolutely.
All
That's
right.
exactly how I have it planned out too. Caleb, I texted you, and I feel sheepish about it, but I texted because he looked struggling. Like his first possession out there, I think he wound up falling out of his shoe, and then he kind of bobbled the ball a couple times. Defensively, his footwork just didn't seem right compared to the stance that he was getting in last year when he was at his peak. And he's still working his way back, still obviously rusty from coming back from injury, but then slowly but surely started getting more comfortable, started finding the opportunity to get back into his rhythm, and he really stepped up in a very positive way.
In the second quarter, he made a mid-range jumper, then got a steal that led to a score, and then forced Max Strus, our old friend, into a travel. Was a big part of the 14-2 run in the second quarter that basically broke the game open. So I thought it was a really quality game from Caleb Martin. And like you said, little rough to start, but found his footing. Almost literally got his shoe back on, found his footing, and then took off from there. And you hope that we know he's better than what he had been. He's obviously working through this knee tendonitis, whichever it is. But if he could look a lot more like this, and that's going to be huge for the Heat. How many minutes did he play tonight? It was 26 minutes, so a season high.
Late in the fourth quarter when the starters were out and everybody was kind of just sitting. He was out there for most of that fourth quarter. So yeah. We should point out as well, Drew Smith suffering what looked like a pretty bad injury.
Yeah.
I know we're focusing on the positive here. Drew Smith got some minutes tonight, and he was okay in those minutes, but then it was very short-lived performance there because he got hurt almost immediately contesting a three-pointer. And John Crotty talking about the fact that the Cavs court is elevated, and it looked like when Smith fell, like his foot slipped on a sheet of paper that was underneath an assistant
under a
coach's
chair, and then off the court. Freak accident, just wild.
Very, very weird. So we wish all the best for him. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely, and it's worth reporting that news. All right, coming up, and then Josh Richardson also got a cookie, 14 points, 5 of 9 shooting, 2
great game,
3-point range, and 5
really
assists to 0 turnovers. Great game. Overall for Josh Richardson as a table setter. All right, we're going to get to our listener questions next. Have the Heat figured it out on offense? We're going to zoom out coming up here on Locked On Heat. Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Everydayers, tune in tomorrow when we're joined by Sports Illustrated's Rohan Nadkarni to discuss our biggest takes from the Heat season so far, including why Duncan Robinson should continue to start even when Tyler Hero returns, and why a trade at some point needs to be made. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube and on your favorite podcast app. Let's go now to your listener questions. Thanks for sending them in on Twitter using that hashtag AskLOHeat, LockedOnHeat@gmail.com, LockedOnHeat on Instagram as well. This question comes from Brian, who writes in, the Heat came into tonight ranked 18th in offensive rating and only 1 point per 100 possessions behind 14th. Is this real? Is it inflated due to some bad recent opponents? Or could Miami get up to the 15th, 16th range once Hero gets back? David, what do you think?
I don't think you can look at the quality of opponent and have that take away. Like, that's what Miami's supposed to. That's what good teams are supposed to do. They're supposed to beat up on those bad teams. So I think the fact that they can inflate whatever numbers are necessary against these inferior, quote unquote, inferior opponents is absolutely fine. I don't think that should be weighed as a factor. I think I also think that they're figuring things out as the season has progressed and understand their identity much more clearly. Their roles feel much more defined than they were earlier in the year. I don't think that's necessarily due to the loss of Tyler Hero. I know everybody's going to be scapegoating him as the reason why Miami has been playing better, but I think Highsmith starting has been a huge factor for this team. And I think everybody kind of figures out what their role is supposed to be commensurately. And I think to the question, I think once Tyler comes back, I think they'll be even better. Maybe I'm just being optimistic here, but I think this is more the norm rather than the exception. I don't see any reason why they wouldn't finish top 15 in offense.
The Tyler Hero thing, the Haywood Highsmith thing, we've talked so much about it. The biggest development for Miami, the biggest change offensively has just been Jimmy Butler getting into regular season form. No preseason for Jimmy Butler. He looked rusty to start the year in those first few games, but since November, the Heat are 14th in offensive rating. So just a smidge above league average. They're probably actually going to be higher after this game too. So they're 14th in offensive rating. And I'm like, okay, well, they're getting a whole lot of turnovers, easy points in transition, things like that kind of tend to boost your overall rating. What are they in the half court? Well, I looked it up on Cleaning the Glass. Since November, 9th in offensive half court rating. That's a crazy stat for this team. Now, they've been shooting the ball really well.
Really well.
And so that's a big part of this. But they're also taking really good shots also. This is not a team that's high up in volume. Actually, their best comp, I'm trying to think, okay, what other team is like Miami that tends to be high up there in offensive rating? Their best comp is the Oklahoma City Thunder. They take about the same amount of shots from three-point range. They take the good shots, high-efficiency looks. They try to control the boards, control the turnover to the assist-to-turnover ratio or the turnover margin, rather, and things like that. Their best scorers are guys that do most of their work in the mid-range, whether it's Shai Gilgeous-Alexander or Jimmy Butler, who are opportunistic when they take their three-pointers, and everybody else sort of falls in line after them. I think I don't know if it's – I don't know. Oklahoma City's a top 10 offense. Miami will not be a top 10 offense this year. I'll let me put it this way. I'll be very surprised if they're a top 10 offense this year, even when Tyler Hero comes back. But if they could stay, even with a dip in the shooting percentages that is going to come at some point, they're going to go through a slump as a team. But you add Tyler Hero back in, you layer his return on top of that, I think that could stabilize whatever shooting slump is about to happen. And then after that, yeah, I think about league average is where this team settles in offensively. They're really deep. They actually have a bench that can score. And that, to me, is the biggest difference from last year. The shooting was atrocious last year. You and I expected more of a regression, or reversion, I should say, to the mean this year. That's happening. That's already going to happen. So that's already done. But then you add the fact that guys like Jaime Jaquez Jr., Caleb Martin coming off the bench can score. And Josh Richardson. Like that stuff really matters for this team. Kevin Love coming off the bench and having him as an option behind Bam as more of an offensive factor than Zellers and all those guys last year. So yeah, I think this team is just better offensively, and if they settle into league average and can maintain a top 10 rating defensively, then that's the formula for this team going forward.
I know I'm putting in the spot here. What are their assist numbers for the month ever since like this 10-game streak has started, really? Because it seems like they're making passes much more frequently. And it's igniting like the offense. It just looks, and aside from the pace and the transition baskets and everything else like that, they seem like they're moving the ball a little bit. And I think that can be at least somewhat attributed to the loss of Tyler. But we also saw Tyler increase his assist ratio when he was playing and before the injury. And so I wonder, is that going to be part of this offense moving forward? Because if so, I don't know if top 10 is realistic, but maybe they could even get as high as like 12th, 13th in the league. That seems possible if they can continue to get these kind of shooting nights from guys like Duncan and everybody else.
They're 7th since the start of November in assist percentages. So the percent of their points that come off of an assist, 65.9% of their made shots are directly from an assist. Again, that's 7th. That's behind the Warriors, the Spurs, the Kings, the Raptors, the Nuggets, obviously. And somehow the Phoenix Suns are up there. So, yeah, I think it's just because everybody doubles Kevin Durant and Devin Booker, and just you get wide open shots for guys like Eric Gordon. Fair enough, yeah, no, I think that says a lot, and it's good by you to even notice that just with the eye test, and the numbers bear it out. So, look, I do think that this is sustainable. The half courts thing still scares me a little bit. Bam Adebayo's shooting numbers from mid-range. He's shooting 50+% from that range. I know we believe in Bam Adebayo. I don't believe that he's basically Kobe Bryant from a scoring perspective, and I think that's okay. So he needs to tilt his shot chart a little bit more to the efficient areas, the restricted area by the basket specifically. If he can keep doing more of that, then that's gonna be good. At some point, I know he's keeping track of it, but Jimmy Butler's not gonna be shooting 50% or even 40+% from 3-point range. Like that's gonna normalize too at some point. So they got to figure out those bumps. Those bumps are coming. They need to figure them out. There's going to be some tough ones coming up here. I don't know when, but it's going to happen. I'm not trying to pour cold water over everybody, but I'm just telling you, it's going to happen. That said, I think there's enough here where you could believe in it, that they have a good formula that works, and I think that there's enough options here that can keep them at least at league average. All right. Again, tomorrow we will be joined by Sports Illustrated's Rowan Nadkarni to talk about our biggest takes, our hot takes from the season so far, but not really hot takes. These are takes that we really, truly believe Duncan Robinson versus Tyler Hero in the starting lineup. We'll touch on that. Why a trade might have to happen. Jimmy Butler's all-star status. Bam Adebayo's all-NBA status. We're going to talk about all of that on Friday. So thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Hit that subscribe button on YouTube and follow us on your favorite podcast app. And a reminder, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. So go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody that's out there. We are so thankful for you guys to tuning in. A bunch more great shows and content coming up for you after the holiday.